I never thought sharing a sleeping bag with him would be this complicated. We'd been on countless camping trips before, me, him, and a few of our friends, but this time was different. Maybe it was the way he looked at me earlier, his eyes lingering just a bit too long as I unpacked my gear, or maybe it was just me, overthinking as usual. Either way, something about tonight felt off, or maybe right. I couldn't quite tell. We were supposed to be setting up camp beside the lake, but a last-minute change of plans, thanks to the weather forecast, had us hiking deeper into the forest, where the trees would shield us from the worst of the wind. The others had spread out between two larger tents, leaving me and him with the smaller one. At first, I didn't think much of it. We'd shared tents before, no big deal. But when I unzipped my pack and realized I'd forgotten my sleeping bag at the trailhead, my stomach dropped. He laughed when I admitted it. Not in a mocking way, but in that low, soft chuckle of his that made my chest feel weirdly tight. "Guess you're bunking with me then," he said with a shrug, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I forced a grin, hiding the way my hands were shaking just a bit as I secured the tent poles. Sharing a sleeping bag with my best friend, who I'd been secretly pining for since junior year, was not on my camping checklist. I glanced over at him as he crouched by the campfire, the glow highlighting the sharp angle of his jaw. I knew it would be torture, being so close, pretending everything was normal when it was anything but. He tossed me a pack of trail mix, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest. "You good, man?" he asked, noticing my silence. "Yeah, just tired from the hike," I mumbled, ripping the packet open to avoid his gaze. He nodded, accepting my excuse without question. Night fell quicker than expected, the forest swallowing the last bits of daylight. By the time the fire had died down, everyone else was already wrapped in their own sleeping bags, murmuring softly from their tents. I watched him unzip his bag, the fabric rustling as he settled inside. Then he glanced back at me, eyes half-lidded with sleep. "Come on," he murmured, lifting the side of the sleeping bag as an invitation. I hesitated, my pulse thrumming in my ears, but then I forced myself to move, slipping in beside him. The warmth was immediate, almost suffocating. My heart pounded, and I made sure to keep my back to him, even though I could feel his presence like a tangible weight. I swallowed hard, telling myself to just sleep. It was nothing. Just two friends sharing a bit of space on a cold night. No big deal. Except, lying there with his breath soft against the back of my neck, it felt like everything was about to change. We'd known each other since freshman year, back when I barely spoke to anyone and he seemed to know everyone. I met him at a bonfire party I'd been dragged to, clinging to the edges of the crowd while he stood in the center, laughing like he belonged there. I can still remember the way he caught me staring, my face probably bright red, and walked over with that grin of his, the one that always seemed a little too confident. He introduced himself, handed me a beer, and started talking like we'd known each other forever. I don't think I said more than 5 words that night, but he didn't seem to mind. Somehow we just clicked after that. Study sessions in the library turned into late-night drives, and those late-night drives became weekend camping trips when he found out I liked hiking. He'd always been the more adventurous one, roping me into cliff jumping and night swimming while I tried to talk him out of breaking his neck. I was the one who packed extra snacks and triple-checked the weather, and he was the one who always forgot something crucial, like the time he brought 2 left shoes on a mountain trail and hiked it anyway just to prove a point. This trip was no different. He'd been the one to suggest it as usual, and I'd agreed before I could think it through. It was supposed to be a simple weekend away from everything. Just me, him, and a couple of friends with a couple of beers around the fire. But of course, things never went according to plan. The rain came out of nowhere, sweeping through the camp just as we were setting up. Our friends had been quick to jump into their tents, but somehow we'd been caught in it, scrambling to throw tarps over the gear while the sky opened up above us. By the time we managed to get the tent zipped up, we were drenched. He flopped back onto the sleeping bag, arms spread wide, water dripping from his hair onto the nylon. "Adventure, right?" he said, laughing breathlessly. I couldn't help but shake my head, peeling off my soaked jacket and tossing it to the corner. "You have the worst luck, you know that?" I replied, squeezing the water out of my shirt. "You say that every time," he shot back, smirking. "And yet you keep coming with me." I rolled my eyes, pretending to focus on untying my boots. "I'm just here to keep you from dying. In the woods. Someone's got to make sure you don't forget your own name out here." He laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "Admit it. You'd be bored without me." I didn't answer, because maybe he was right. I busied myself with our gear, laying out whatever was still dry while he dug through his backpack. "You bring the extra blanket?" I asked, my back still to him. There was a pause, long enough that I turned around. He grimaced, holding up a crumpled rain poncho instead. I groaned, running my hands through my damp hair. "Of course. We'll be fine," he said, shrugging it off like it was nothing. "The bag's big enough for two." I couldn't quite hide the way my breath caught, but he didn't seem to notice. He never did. Or if he did, he was good at pretending. "Guess you're stuck with me," he added, tossing the poncho back into his pack. Stuck with him. Like I'd ever complain. I turned back to organizing the rest of our things, but I could feel his gaze on me, lingering just a bit too long before he zipped up his bag. I told myself it was just the rain, just the exhaustion from the hike that made me shiver when he brushed past me to reach for the lantern. But deep down, I knew better. I always had. The rain didn't let up. If anything, it got worse. By the time the wind picked up, snapping branches outside our tent like they were twigs, I could feel the chill creeping in through the seams. I watched him fuss with the zipper of the tent, flap, yanking it tighter, as if that would keep the cold out. It didn't. The temperature had dropped, sharp and sudden, like a warning. He glanced back at me, eyes dark in the dim light of the lantern. "You good?" I nodded, rubbing my hands together. My fingers were stiff from the cold, and I realized I'd been sitting there just staring at him for way too long. I turned away, busying myself with nothing. "Yeah, just colder than I thought it'd be." "Good thing we're doubling up then," he replied, completely unbothered. He stretched out his arms, groaning like he'd been holding tension in his muscles for hours. I tried not to look at the way his shirt pulled tight against his chest or how his hair was still damp from the rain, messy and curling at the edges. Swallowed hard, turning back to my pack and pretending to look for something I didn't need. "You sure it's going to fit both of us?" I asked, even though I knew it would. We'd used it before during colder hikes, times when we were too tired or too drunk to care about space. But this time felt different. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I was making it weird. He shrugged, unzipping the bag halfway. "It's either that or you freeze. Your call." He flashed me a grin that was probably meant to be reassuring, but it just made my stomach flip. I forced a laugh, masking it with a cough. "Right. Don't want hypothermia." I took my time sliding out of my jacket, fingers numb as I fumbled with the buttons. He'd already slipped inside the bag, leaving just enough room for me to join. I hesitated, staring at that narrow strip of space beside him. I'd done this before, so why did it feel like my heart was going to beat right out of my chest? "You coming in, or am I zipping up without you?" he asked, his voice muffled by the fabric. I startled, snapping out of my thoughts. Yeah, I'm coming." I climbed in, trying to keep as much distance as I could, which was practically none. The sleeping bag was warm, almost too warm, and I felt his body heat seep into mine, our legs brushing awkwardly as I settled. "Comfy?" he asked, voice low. Yeah," I replied, my throat dry. He shifted, turning onto his side to face me, and I went rigid. His eyes flicked over my face, searching for something I wasn't sure I wanted him to find. "You good?" he asked, softer this time. Yeah, I'm good, I lied. The rain pelted the tent, a steady rhythm that only made the silence between us feel louder. I could hear his breathing, feel the rise and fall of his chest through the thin fabric of his shirt. We'd never been this close before, at least not like this. Not alone, not with just inches of space and nothing else. I turned my head, staring at the roof of the tent, counting the drops that slipped down the sides just to distract myself. But I could feel him still watching me. "You cold?" he asked suddenly. I shook my head. "No, I'm good." He didn't move for a second, then shifted closer, his knee brushing mine beneath the fabric. "You're shaking." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words got stuck. He was right. I hadn't even realized. My hands were clenched tight, my breath coming out unsteady. He sighed, reaching over before I could protest, his hand warm as it settled on my arm. "Relax. Man, it's just me. Just him." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Like he had any idea what it felt like to be this close, to feel his breath ghost over my skin, to be wrapped up in the same damn sleeping bag while my heart tried to break out of my ribs. I forced a nod, swallowing hard. "Yeah, sorry. You always do that," he murmured, his hand still on my arm. "Apologize for nothing." I turned to look at him, my breath catching when I realized just how close he'd gotten. His eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them, shadows flickering in the lantern light. His hand squeezed gently, like he was trying to make a point. I wanted to ask him what he meant, why he always looked at me like that but never said a damn thing. But the words tangled up in my throat, and I just nodded again. His gaze lingered, just for a second longer, and I swore I saw something flicker there, something unspoken. But then he pulled back, rolling onto his back with a sigh. "Get some sleep," he murmured. "Big hike tomorrow." I turned away, pressing my eyes shut and listening to the rain hammer down outside. But sleep didn't come. Not with the warmth of his body pressed against mine, not with his handprint still lingering on my arm like a brand. I don't know how long I lay there, listening to his breathing even out, his chest rising and falling against my back. I tried to sleep, really tried, but my mind wouldn't shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd replay the way his hand had lingered on my arm, the way he'd looked at me like he was waiting for something. I kept telling myself it was just him being him. He was touchy with everyone. But it didn't feel like that. Not tonight. It wasn't just the way he'd brushed against me. It was the way he stayed there. Like he wanted to. Like he needed the contact just as much as I did. My stomach twisted at the thought, and I forced my eyes shut again, willing the feeling away. But it stayed, stubborn and unyielding, burning beneath my skin. I shifted slightly, trying to find a more comfortable position. The movement must have woken him up because he groaned behind me, his hand reaching out instinctively and landing on my hip. "You awake?" he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. I froze, every nerve in my body lighting up at the touch. "Yeah," I whispered, not trusting my voice to go any louder. He didn't move his hand, just left it there, warm and solid against my hip. My heart hammered in my chest, loud enough that I was sure he could hear it. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice closer than I expected. "Guess not." A pause stretched out between us, heavy and loaded. I could feel his breath against the back of my neck, soft and steady. "Cold?" he asked after a moment. "No. Just..." I hesitated. The word caught on my tongue. His fingers twitched against my hip, a gentle reminder of how close we were. I could turn around, just look him in the eyes and say it. Tell him everything I'd been keeping bottled up for years. I could almost feel the words pressing against my throat, fighting to break free. But then he shifted, his hand slipping away as he rolled onto his back. Well, if you want me to scoot over or whatever, just say something, he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. I swallowed hard, staring up at the ceiling of the tent, the shadows playing tricks on my mind. Yeah, I'll let you know, I replied, barely above a whisper. Silence fell again, broken only by the rain still tapping against the nylon. I tried to match his breathing, to force my heart to calm down, but it didn't work. It never worked. I clenched my fists inside the sleeping bag, feeling the fabric strain beneath my grip. I couldn't keep doing this. Not anymore. Can I ask you something? The question tumbled out before I could stop it, my voice louder than I intended. He stirred, turning his head to look at me, eyes squinting in the dim light. Yeah, sure. I hesitated, the words sticking in my throat. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, a steady drumbeat of anxiety. Back there, when you said I always apologize for nothing, what did you mean by that? He blinked, clearly not expecting the question. I don't know. You just do. You say sorry even when you don't need to, like you're afraid of, I don't know, taking up too much space. I felt my chest tighten, the air around us seeming to thin out. And you don't think I should be? No, he replied, his voice softening. Not with me. I swallowed, my gaze flickering back to the tent ceiling. The words burned on my tongue, desperate to get out. I took a breath, then another. There's something I need to tell you, I started, my voice shaking. He shifted again, turning onto his side so he was facing me. Okay. His eyes were wide open now, clear and sharp, studying my face. I licked my lips, forcing my hands to stop shaking. I'm not good at this. Talking about feelings. He chuckled low and soft. Yeah, I noticed. I tried to smile, but it fell flat. I stared at him, the words still tangled up inside me, fighting to be heard. I think I'm scared, I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. His expression softened, his hand reaching out almost instinctively. His fingers brushed mine, a light touch that sent a shiver up my spine. Scared of what? He asked, voice gentle. I hesitated, the truth teetering on the edge of my tongue. Of messing this up. Of saying something I can't take back. His gaze held mine, unwavering. You won't, he whispered. My throat tightened, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I think I'm in love with you, I whispered, barely breathing. The confession hung in the air, sharp and electric, like the crackle of a coming storm. His eyes widened, surprise flickering across his face before something deeper settled in. He didn't move, didn't speak, and the silence stretched out between us, fragile and aching. I felt my chest tighten, panic clawing its way up my throat. I'm sorry, I blurted out, starting to turn away. I shouldn't have. His hand shot out, grabbing mine before I could retreat. His grip was firm, grounding. Don't do that, he said, his voice rough and unsteady. Don't apologize. I stared at him, my breath caught somewhere, between panic and hope. His gaze held mine, unflinching. You mean it? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, nodding. Yeah, I mean it. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then he moved, closing the space between us so quickly I barely had time to react. His mouth was on mine before I could second-guess it, warm and soft and real. My eyes fluttered shut, my hands finding his shoulders, gripping tight as if he might disappear if I let go. The kiss was slow, tentative, like he was testing the waters before diving in. I could feel his breath against my cheek, the way his hands curled around my back, pulling me closer. My heart pounded in my chest, loud and Frantic, but I didn't care. Not anymore. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, his breath coming out in ragged bursts. "Been waiting for you to say that," he whispered, his voice shaky. My eyes opened, meeting his. You have?" He nodded, his hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from my face. "Yeah, for a long time." I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face, wide and unrestrained. His thumb traced my cheek, his eyes crinkling at the edges. "Guess we should have shared that damn sleeping bag a long time ago, huh?" He murmured, grinning. I laughed, the sound shaky and raw. "Guess so." We stayed like that for a while, tangled up in each other, the rain still pattering against the tent. But for the first time, I didn't care about the storm outside, not when the real one had finally broken between us. We didn't move for a while, just stayed wrapped up in each other, breaths mingling in the small space between us. His forehead still rested against mine, our noses barely touching. It was like neither of us wanted to break the moment, as if speaking too loudly would shatter whatever fragile thing we'd just built. Eventually, he pulled back slightly, eyes flicking over my face like he was memorizing every detail. "You good?" he asked, voice soft and tentative. I nodded, feeling my cheeks heat up. "Yeah, more than good." A grin spread across his face, wide and a little smug. "You sure? You look kinda dazed." I scoffed, nudging him with my shoulder. "I'm not dazed. I'm processing." "Processing," he repeated with a chuckle. "That what we're calling it now? Shut up." I tried to glare, but I couldn't stop the smile tugging at my lips. His laugh was different now, less guarded, more open, like some invisible weight had been lifted. I felt it too, a lightness in my chest that hadn't been there before. "Hey," he said, his voice dropping a little. He reached out, brushing his thumb over my cheek. "You have no idea how long I've been wanting to do that." The admission caught me off guard. I blinked, staring at him. "Do what?" "Kiss you," he replied simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. "Touch you, just, I don't know, not pretend anymore." My breath hitched, and I stared at him, the rain still tapping softly against the tent. "Not pretend," I repeated, my voice almost a whisper. He shook his head, his hand slipping down to rest against my jaw. "Nope. Pretty tired of pretending, actually." Something inside me broke loose, the last bit of tension unraveling. I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering shut for a moment just to feel it. Really feel it. "Me too," I murmured. "I've been scared, I guess. That I'd ruin this." His thumb traced slow circles against my cheek. "You didn't ruin anything." I opened my eyes, meeting his. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He was quiet for a moment, his expression softening. "I guess we figure it out," he replied. "Together." I swallowed hard, the words sinking in. "Together." I liked how it sounded. "You make it sound easy," I said, half smiling. He shrugged, his grin never faltering. "Maybe it is. Maybe it's just us that made it hard." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound coming out shaky but genuine. "You think you have all the answers, huh?" "Not all of them," he replied, inching a little closer, his hand slipping around my waist. "But I know I'm not going to let you freeze to death out here, so..." He tugged me against him, his body heat seeping into mine. I let out a soft laugh, nestling closer, my head resting against his chest. His heartbeat thudded beneath my cheek, steady and real. "You're just using this as an excuse to cuddle me," I teased. "You caught me." He didn't even bother denying it, his hand stroking slow, lazy lines down my back. "Not sorry, though." I smiled, feeling the tension slip away with every passing second. His hand kept moving, gentle and rhythmic, and I closed my eyes, letting the steady sound of his heartbeat lull me. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle patter, like the storm had given up its fight. After a while, he spoke, voice low and cautious. "You know, this doesn't have to change anything. I mean, it will, but it doesn't have to ruin stuff." I lifted my head, meeting his gaze. "What do you mean?" I don't want you freaking out tomorrow. Thinking this was just, I don't know, a one-time thing." He scratched the back of his neck, suddenly looking unsure. "'Cause it's not for me." His words hit me square in the chest, warm and heavy. I bit my lip, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not for me either." Relief washed over his features, his grin returning full force. He leaned in, pressing a kiss to my forehead that lingered longer than it should have. "Good." We stayed like that for a while, tangled up in each other, talking in hushed voices about nothing and everything. The kind of conversations that didn't need to go anywhere, that just existed for the sake of hearing each other speak. And when the rain finally stopped and the world grew quiet outside the tent, we didn't move. I drifted off to the steady rhythm of his breathing, his arm curled around me like he had no intention of letting go. And for once, I didn't think about what would happen next. I just let myself exist in that moment, warm and safe, knowing that whatever came next, we'd figure it out. Together. The morning came slowly, sunlight slipping through the tent's thin fabric, casting everything in soft, muted light. I blinked awake, still wrapped up in him, his arm draped lazily over my waist, his hand splayed across my stomach. For a moment, I didn't move, afraid that any shift would shatter the fragile calm of it all. But he stirred behind me, his grip tightening instinctively, like he wasn't ready to let go just yet. "Morning," he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "Morning," I replied, my voice softer than usual. It felt too early, too delicate, to speak any louder. His eyes cracked open, squinting against the light. "I wasn't dreaming, was I?" he asked, his hand giving a small squeeze. I shook my head, a grin tugging at my lips. "Not unless I was dreaming, too." He let out a breath, something almost like relief, and then he leaned in, pressing his forehead to mine. "Good," he murmured, his eyes slipping shut again. "I don't want it to be." We stayed like that, for a long moment, tangled up in the quiet stillness of the morning. Outside, the rain had stopped, the world damp and fresh with the smell of pine and wet earth. The air felt cleaner somehow, like everything had been scrubbed raw and left out. To dry, eventually he pulled back, stretching his arms above his head with a groan. "Guess we should get moving, huh?" he said, though he made no effort to untangle himself from me. "Probably," I replied, not moving either. He smirked, eyes crinkling at the edges. "Or we could just stay here, pretend the world doesn't exist for a little while," I laughed, shaking my head. Tempting, but we both knew we couldn't hide out in a tent forever, no matter how much we wanted to. Eventually, we unzipped the sleeping bag, the cold air rushing in like a sharp reminder of the world outside. I shivered, reaching for my jacket, and that's when he did it. Without hesitation, he reached out, snagging my hand in his before I could even zip up my coat. His fingers threaded through mine, firm and certain, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stared down at our hands, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a steady rhythm. I looked up at him, my heart hammering in my chest. He met my gaze, expression soft and unguarded. "We good?" he asked, voice low and careful. "Yeah," I replied, squeezing his hand. "We're good." We stepped out of the tent together, our hands still clasped between us. The world stretched out before us, bright and endless, the sky a pale shade of blue streaked with thin clouds. Everything smelled like rain and possibility, like the earth had been washed clean and left waiting. He glanced over at me, his grip tightening for just a second. So, what now? I took a breath, letting it fill my lungs, my eyes drifting over the horizon. I guess we just keep going. He nodded, his smile softening. Together. Together. We walked back to camp hand in hand, neither of us letting go. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it didn't need to be. It was enough, more than enough. It was real and solid and right there between us. And as we made our way back, the world, stretching out wide and full of promise, I couldn't help but think that this was only the beginning.